because 10 goes into 40 and 10 goes into 90. You see, you follow? But I can still now do 4 and 20. But what?
If you wouldn't, you could only do that if you wouldn't have done the other one.
You can do one numerator and one denominator.
That's it.
At a time. I look for a numerator and a denominator that one number can go into both of them evenly. And I put that number in and reduce that number just like I would reduce any fraction at the end of the problem. So now I have a 20 and a 4, right? I can say 4 goes into 4 and 4 goes into 20. Now that's as far as I can go because now everything down here is a 1. And that's what you want it to be. Because now whatever this times this times this is, that's the answer to the problem. Because over 1 is the same thing as just that.
So what's this process called? Isn't it called?
Canceling. It's called canceling. So you can find that in your book and do some practicing, find it online and practice, but again...
What's cross multiply? What's that?
To cross multiply means to multiply the top times the bottom, and that's not what we're doing. We're going to do that when we do ratio and proportion. That's cross multiply.
This is canceling.
This is called canceling.
So you can only cancel one at a time until you're out of numbers?
Until you're out of numbers. Sometimes you can only cancel 2 numbers. Sometimes you can't cancel any. But you always look to cancel, or if you can cancel, because you're making your numbers smaller when you cancel.
It makes it easier.
So that when you get to the end, sometimes you don't have to do a whole lot to reduce, because you always have to reduce the fraction answer at the end of the problem. And so a lot of times, once you get to the end of the problem, the number's so big, you don't know what number goes into each one of them evenly. You know, you could have had maybe
Unless when you don't have a calculator, huh?
well, even if you have a calculator, how are you going to, the calculator's not going to tell you what number goes into these numbers evenly.
It won't?
Oh, what question can you ask a calculator to tell you that? A computer can tell you that, a
Well,
calculator
maybe
won't.
if you divide the...
What, so you're going to try every number? It'll tell you if you're right, yeah. But you can't say, what number goes into 17 and into 68 evenly? Does anybody know a number that goes into 17 and into 68 evenly?
No, there's not one, but like when it's like...
Is there a number that goes into 17 and into 68 evenly?
No.
You don't think so, right? But there is. 17 goes into 17 and 17 goes into 68.
Shucks.
4 times 17 is 68. So see, a lot of times when you get down to that answer, you get numbers like that, 17, 13, you don't think anything goes into them. First of all, always try the number itself, because that might go into it, okay? But other than that, had I canceled maybe back there somewhere, I may have come up with the 1 over 4 instead of coming up with 17 over 68. You see what I'm saying? I could have reduced my numbers back in the problem so that I never would have come up with that 17 over 68.
So 17 is 1/4 of 68?
Mm-hmm. 4 times 17, 68. You see, so that's when canceling helps too. Because a lot of times when you don't cancel, you come up with an answer that you don't know if something goes into both of them evenly, and you don't get your answer then down to the lowest terms. And if you put 1768 down as your answer, it'd be marked wrong. Because the only answer they'd have there would be 1/4 to be the correct answer. Because all fractions have to be reduced to the lowest terms to be correct.
So even in them problems, you have to reduce at the end, just like that.
Every fraction, the last thing you have to do is to reduce it to the lowest terms. Otherwise, your answer is incorrect. Okay? Okay. Let's go on to the next one. Number 9 says Sandra had a 3/4 pound bar of cooking chocolate. You can picture that. It's not a whole pound, right? It's 3/4. We're on page 132. 3/4 of a pound. She used a 1/2 pound of the bar to bake a cake. How much chocolate was left What operation are you performing there? You're subtracting, right? She had 3/4. She wants to take from that 1/2. So now, as soon as I know that it's subtraction fraction problem, what's the first thing I'm gonna do? Write the problem vertically. First thing I'm gonna do is put 3/4, take away 1/2, and I'm gonna do that vertically. Next thing I have to do is what? Find the common denominator, which is 4. The next thing I do? Subtract the numerators. My answer is 1. The last thing I would have to do is simplify or reduce. That can't be reduced any further. That's how much she has left. Okay? Now, truly, what you should have figured is that in your mind, you know that a half is how many fourths? 2/4, right? Because we know that 4/4 is the whole thing. Because this 4 lets us know how many are in the whole. So if I know that 4/4 is the whole thing, I know that 2/4 is half of it. So I know if I take 2/4 from 3/4, I'm going to have 1/4 left. So again, you didn't have to do all of that math work and go through all of that. It's about solving the problem. It's not about doing the math. You see, so a lot of it, you need to be able to just think about what is it talking about? What does it mean? And then be able to, hey Tommy, to just write the answer down. You don't want to be a robot, you know, so, you know, stiff that, oh, it's a fraction of, it's a subtraction of fraction problem, I got to do this, 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 and this. No, not if you can think it through. And a lot of things you ought to be able to think through and figure out. You don't always have to work the problem. The sign-in sheet is somewhere. Okay, right there. Okay. Okay, let's look at number 10. It says 500 questionnaires were sent out asking people their reaction to a plan to build a new cement plant in their community. Period. What have they just told us? They've sent out 500 questionnaires asking these people what they think about it. In 1 month, about 1/6 of the questionnaires were returned. 1/6 were returned. Now think about what we talked about yesterday. They didn't return them all, right? They only returned 1/6. That means they've separated that 500 into 6 pieces. That's what it means. And one of those pieces came back. We don't know how many are in that, but we know it's one of the 6. We know that there's 6 just the same number. You see what I'm saying? 6 of the same. And we have one of them, page 132. So now tell me how you're going to figure out how many questionnaires were returned. It says approximately how many, so it's not going to be just exactly. Divide what? Divide what? What's being divided into 6 pieces?
500.
The 500 questionnaires, right? So when you divide 500 by 6, you're going to probably get about what? 80. Because 6 times that would be 48, right? Okay. Okay, so about 80. Now remember we talked about yesterday that to find a fraction of a number, does anybody remember 2 ways to do that? If I want to find 1/6 of that number, there are 2 different ways I can do that. Divided by 6 is what they did. And what's the other thing I could have done?
You can change it to 6, all to 6.
Multiply it times 1/6.
Yeah.
To find 1/6 of a number, you multiply 1/6 times the number. Multiply by 1/6 or divide by 6, you're gonna get the same thing, because when I multiply 1/6, I'm gonna get 500 over 6, which means I gotta divide 500 by 6, right? So instead of going through all that, I could just divide 500 by 6 in the first place. And you know this is gonna continue. Okay, so about 80 of them, as we said. But always remember that, to find a third, you can multiply times a third or divide by 3.
Why does it say approximately if
That
it
means
keeps
that
remaining?
because they didn't give you 83 1/3 as a choice.
Yeah, it just keeps
So
going
approximately
on and
means
on.
to round it off, about how many.
Oh, so that's not like a definite.
Right, approximate means about how many.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's about 80, if it's 83, okay? Number 11. 2 months after mailing the questionnaires in the last problem, 294 were filled out and returned. About what fraction of the total were returned in 2 months? So we said about 80 were returned in 1 month, right? And then about another 300 were returned in the second month, right? So about 380 is about what then?
3/5.
And how do you get that?
Just thought about it.
Divide it.
It's about 300.
Just because it's 5 and it's just like 5 pieces of 3, I just thought about